Welcome back to LaidOPEN Podcast. This is your host, Charna Cassell. This episode is for you if you're interested in spirituality, if were raised in a high control religious environment and have sought out a different path in a different way, if you are trying to find ways to make sense of this human experience and this reality. So today's guest is Taylor Perkins, and he's a content creator obsessed with consciousness and the spiritual expansion we're living through. He self-identifies as just a dude with a platform who wants you to know how perfect you are. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Taylor. Welcome, Taylor. So good to have you here.
Learn how to live embodied. Your life is about to unwind. Uncover new tools and start healing. Leave trauma and tension behind. Isn't it great, laid open? Let all your desires come true. How can you live laid open? Imagine yourself brand new. Imagine yourself brand
new. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad it all worked out.
Wow.
Despite technology, we're all here.
We're here. We made it. Yeah.
I follow you on Instagram and appreciate the mini deep dives that you do into such a variety of topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious for you, how did you end up on a spiritual and seeking path? And I know that's a really big
Oh my gosh. This is actually something I've been meditating on a lot lately. And I would say where my understanding is now, I realize that we live in duality. And so every truth, every energy has its own paradoxical opposite energy that both exist, both are true, right? And it's like when you hold paradox, it creates this natural balanced state. And I've been thinking a lot about paradox, and there's a reason why I'm diving into this. And it's because, it's really interesting because it's generally, if you think something of yourself, that the equal and opposite is true. So for example, people who think of themselves as enlightened, that they know everything, the energy that they actually embody is being very closed off, right? Because nothing new can come in because they already know everything. They're already right. And so by thinking you're enlightened, the paradoxical truth is you're not. And for those that embody the energy of everything is my teacher, there's so much to learn, you actually have an energetic openness that is the right conditions for new things to come in, for this, expansive information. And so I was born into like a very, very strict Mormon Christian household. Mm-hmm. Have always been kind of like the golden boy, did whatever people told me to do, was successful in it. And I believed it, right? I had the truth and I was like, this is the truth. We're God's chosen people. We're going to give it to the earth. And it was like a very closed off energy. And all of that was good and great until, I had a bunch of success in my life. Everything I touched, I used to joke, it was just like, I just embodied this energy of like, everything just works out for my highest good, enter a contest and I'm like, I'm going to win, and I would win it. And all that was good and great until my mid 20s, had made millions of dollars in the stock market. My background is finance and economics. I went down the road, what most people do, where it's money's happiness, right? So let's go chase the money. I decided to build a company because I've always had this heart of wanting to like help people and change the world. And so I thought, I've made a ton of money in the stock market. If I build this company that teaches anybody with a cell phone the principles of investing, they don't need to go to college. They don't need to take on all this debt, right? We can teach the next generation how to be so smart. And so that's what drove me forward. Amazing things happened until they didn't. The company didn't work. It collapsed. There was like a few things that happened, like some betrayal where it was like, oh my gosh, like everything was out of my control. And I lost everything. And so for me, it cracked me completely open where I thought I had failed God. I thought I had failed Jesus. I failed my wife, my kids, all of these different things. And it truly took me to the point where I was just like, I wanted to unsubscribe from life. Like it was just too much to handle. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I remember I had done some research about psychedelics, and I knew that they could help with depression. Again, I was very, very Mormon, so I was afraid that that was a tool of Satan, right? Where I'm like, this is a tool of the devil. But it got to the point where I talked to my now ex-wife, and I was just like, hey, I really want to do this. And she's like, you need to. She's like, I can tell the place that you're in. And so I went into, an ayahuasca ceremony, just being like, please help me with my depression. And basically, it was just an experience where I experienced, the divine in infinite forms. And it was like, you think you know everything. And then it was like, boom, here's everything you don't know. And it just completely cracked me open where I was just like, oh my gosh. And then that experience was like, it was like, not only that, but it's like, you were never sent to be in finance. You were never sent to do this. And it was just like, here's who you actually are. And these are the things that I kind of talk about in my content, it was like all of the masks just came off, and I was able to truly tap into what has always been there, recognized it. Now I look back on it and I'm like, wow, I recognized this throughout time, but it was just, putting different little labels on it. And so that was about 5 years ago. And it's been a little bit of a process, kind of opening up the throat chakra, learning to express myself authentically.
So psychedelics, one tool to unlearn indoctrination, right? To open to what we don't know.
Yeah.
Go beyond what we think we know. What are some other key tools that you have discovered that have helped you uncover a different truth?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. And I do want to put a warning out there, like psychedelics, like everything in this plane that we live in, not all good, not all bad. Like there are a lot of energies out there. And I have also seen a lot of people who have turned to psychedelics that have completely thrown them into psychosis. They've lost, touch with reality. And again, it's not the psychedelics that are doing it, right? It's us. And so if you feel the call, amazing tool, but also totally fine if you don't. Yeah.
I want to say something to that because, I'm a licensed psychotherapist. There are a number of people in my community close to me that are medicine guides. And I have, I think the warning is really important.
Yeah.
And it's like, who are the people that are guiding you? What is their actual training?
Totally.
What are your integration tools? Because a lot of what you're pointing to, it's like, okay, are you taking big amounts of something and then going into the wild? And then how do you make sense? Because if your whole identity comes apart and everything you know and yourself to be is infested in this, like this very structured box that you've been raised in, and then it becomes dismantled, how do you walk that path?
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's one of those things. I think it is such an amazing tool. There's a cool podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to it, called the Emerald Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Emerald Podcast. Amazing. Yeah. And I think one of the cool things that he touched on somewhat recently is about guardians and protectors. And he spoke to a lot of shamans. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they were saying is like, people in the West are crazy. They're like, to just take a psychedelic, crack yourself open. And they're like, you don't have someone there who is trained to work with these energies. They're like, you are opening yourself up to a whole world of things that you are not ready to hold on your own. And that was something that I think really stuck closely is, there was a mother who talked about the different paths to truth. And he said, it doesn't matter what the path is, as long as it's rooted in truth. And I would, as long as its roots are deep in that earth, in truth, and it can guide you. And I would say the same thing goes with psychedelics, is they're an amazing tool. Just make sure it's being with someone, something, a group that is rooted in truth, that is rooted in wisdom, that is not just going to leave you alone. Because like I said, I have seen some people who are just amazing, incredible people, and it really just cracked them open, where it has taken them into a completely different plane of, consciousness.
The thing that's also really tricky is our systems all need really different things, right? And so one person who's really porous or sensitive or sensitized may need no medicine. They're already experiencing the world without it, in the way that somebody who has a really dense, numb, or protected system needs so much more to crack them open. And so if someone is not, someone can have a lot of experience and maybe training in one way, but that's not the right training for this person's system.
Exactly.
And what is your system picking up, and what's the level of sensitivity in this particular system? And if you can't evaluate that, and you're just like going like, oh, you heard about this through a friend, and then you join a group of people, or you're even working one-on-one with somebody who doesn't have the right tools for you, and assessing that is such a tricky process.
I think that's the key that I would say here to people is, whether it's tough. I don't want to use the language, because I was going to say, like wherever you are on your spiritual journey, because, the way that we speak and the way that we hold things holds so much power. So for example, right, if you put these ascended masters, for example, on pedestals, you're subconsciously creating distance between you and them, because you view yourself as lesser, therefore you create that, right? And I think sometimes we talk about the spiritual journey. People say there's so many paths up the mountain, but then the next step, right, is realizing there is no mountain. Like there is no, like, you are on your path, right? And so what I want to say is, wherever anybody is on their individual journey and expansion, your intuition is always tapped in. Now, we have been taught throughout our lives to silence that voice, to not listen to it, to second guess, right? But this is like the feeling that comes in before the emotion, the analytical thoughts. And so anybody out there, if you feel called to something, and as you're doing your research and exploring, the number one guide is inside of you, and it will lead you.
What comes to mind is a couple of things. I was thinking about parents, and it's like, your kid having a total meltdown in public, like what gets triggered in your system, and what did you learn about parenting? How were you raised? Did you get to be self-expressed? Like all the things. So basically anything you dissociate from, that becomes that unconscious material. That's a trigger that will get, and you'll think, if depending on your state of mind, you might actually not understand developmentally that it's appropriate for a two-year-old to be melting down in a particular way. And you might actually take a stance that's very punitive if that's what you were raised with, and feel like, why are you doing this to me? I mean, that is something it's really painful for everybody involved. So a situation like that person needs to learn nervous system regulation and practices of like, how do they. So there needs to be the learning over here in order to be able to, in the practice, daily practice, so that in that moment they get to apply what they're learning. But you can't expect someone to be able to respond or not react in a triggering situation if they're not in the practices already.
There's so much to learn in situations like that. And, what I would tell people is, it's like, okay, if you have your child that's kind of, having a meltdown, right? And it's going to trigger some things, it's going to bring some things up. But then also like witness your child as they move through, and then see how it's like they can generally leave those meltdowns and then they're just back as if nothing happened. And it's like, how many of us adults also need to realize where it's like, okay, the child needs to learn like a safe place, an appropriate time, how to express these emotions without, throwing a tantrum in the middle of a grocery store. But the adult also needs to learn is see how they do not hold on to these emotions, see how when they're feeling them, they express it, they let that move. I think nature teaches this beautifully, where it's like, water that's moving is generally healthy. Water that stays pooled and stagnant, it gets disease ridden. You get mosquitoes. It's not healthy, right? And for us, we've been taught that good mental health is like suppressing everything. And it's like, this is where like disease comes from. This is where a lot of issues, again, nothing hidden will not become manifest. It's like that energy is continually manifest outside of you. And so it's like, wow, the child needs to learn, but also we need to learn, right? Where it's like, see how they express it. Some adults have like, especially with what's happening in the world right now, you know, my partner, oh my gosh, she does these rage rituals where she will sit down, she'll put music on, and she will literally throw a tantrum. Like she will hit her hands and she will scream and just have that freak out. And then the energy leaves. She's back to a balanced state. And it's like, cool, now let's move on, right? I think that's really cool. I also think witnessing children. Do you have children?
I don't.
What is cool for me is seeing myself in my children, right? And so the other day I was playing with my son, and we were at a trampoline park and we were throwing the ball and he wasn't looking, and I threw it and it hit him on the head. And it's like a softball, but he started to cry. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, buddy. And he was like, you did that on purpose. And I was like, Brooks, I would never do anything like that on purpose. And he was like, you were trying to hurt me. Why would you try to hurt me, Dad? And I was like, I would never try to hurt you, buddy, you know? And so I like saw that and I'm like, that is so strange that he would immediately go to like, you're trying to hurt me. Fast forward, you know, a week down the road, me and my partner, you know, something happens where there was like a miscommunication and she does something. And I was like, I can't believe you would do that. I'm like, why would you hurt me? I'm like, you were trying to hurt me. And she was like, no, I was not trying to hurt you. And immediately when I said those words, I was like, whoa. Brooks is a reflection of me. This is my inner child that's coming out, or something happens. Then I was like, you did this on purpose. And it was the on purpose that hurts the most. It wasn't even the event. And so it's cool because I'll see these things come out in my children and I'm like, wow, that's me, you know, like that is me. And so it's like, all right, now how do I provide a space for them? How would I have provided a space for myself? Like, how do I provide a space for them where, you know, I don't suppress their feelings. I don't, try to put them into a box, but also we can take what they're feeling. And it was cool because I had a conversation with my son after that. And I was just like, hey, you remember when this happened? And it's like, that happens to Dad too. And it's just like, and it's like, it's really hard going through that. And it was cool. It was this teaching moment where we both understood each other, where it was like, these things aren't happening on purpose, but like, what can we do when we feel these things?
I mean, I think what you're pointing to is so important. It's the general piece of like, how do you not personalize? I mean, as humans, we habitually personalize things.
Yeah.
And in kids, they try to make sense of things. They're like, it's black or it's white. It's like, why would this happen? It must be my fault, all that. And thinking about how that relates to my work with my clients.
Yeah.
And because there are times where clients might perceive something and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to invalidate their experience, but it's like, wow, if you think that my intention was this, that is so painful. And I'm so sorry that that's what's happening. And how is it to believe that? So I process that through with somebody, right? Or partnership. I mean, you don't need kids to have your
absolutely
partners are the best people to practice with.
And everything is going to be a mirror and a reflection. Exactly. To anyone listening to this, there is no escaping the mirrors and the reflection. Like it is I always say it's the code behind, reality. There was one time I was meditating. I don't have a piece of paper, but I was just like, I intellectually understood, people would say reality is a mirror. It's a reflection. And I had a lot of thoughts because I'm like, well, how can it be a reflection? There's a lot of terrible things that happen to like good people. Like, what is that a reflection of? What is it showing? And, really, it is so complex because it is mirrors on mirrors on mirrors on mirrors on mirrors. We're all co-creators within this dream. But what I will say with the mirror analogy is, people say the universe created itself to experience itself. And when I was meditating on the mirror, I was just like, what is the purpose of reality? And the words that kept coming to me were reveal me to me. It's just like, what am I? Show me. Where do I collapse? Where do I put my needs over someone else's, right? Like a video that I made when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, right? And I was never a fan because I thought he was incredibly divisive. And I had made content in the past where I'm like, I don't respect people that use division to build platforms, and I'm like, that's not the way to do this. And then when he died, right, there was just kind of like this initial where it was just like he had it coming. And I'm like, whoa, that is so interesting. I was like, well, if I feel like karma is due to him for actions that are done, it's like I also embody that energy for me, where if there's things that I feel I'm doing that are bad or wrong, I feel like I deserve to be punished, right? And so I noticed like some of that where I'm like, okay, let me sit with this, let me release it. What awareness will take you to is to the point where you're going to realize that you are the one that gives meaning, right? And so sometimes events will happen to you, but you get to decide the meaning behind that event, right? And so if we want to decide that, something happening to me, right? In the past, I would decide I'm a victim. This is fair, like this happened to me. I can't overcome this. I've been very open in my publishings and my content about being hypersexualized and then being in a high control religion, right? It was like pornography, masturbation, these different things. But then there was so much self-hate and just guilt around it and shame, which just perpetuates this loop and creates this spiral downwards. And, what really, really shifted me, I had done everything. I had done 12-step programs. I had done working with mentors. I have done, therapy and medicines. But for some reason, I would still be pulled down. I would go to like a mentor or something like that. And then I would tell them, it's like, I'm really still struggling with like pornography. And I'm like, it's just like anytime I get stressed, it's like, let me do this, let me turn off my brain. And all of them, they'd be like, that's so surprising. They're like, that's so shocking that you would struggle with that. They're like, you seem like someone who would be past that, right? And it would further create this, like, what's wrong with me? Like, what's happening? What allowed me to expand past it was realizing that I get to define what the meaning is, right? Interesting thing was the moment that I reframed that, right, that pull was a lot less. And so paired with this mirror analogy and reflection analogy, I would also say that it's important to remember that while things are reflecting you back to you, you are the one that gives it meaning, right? It's that, again, it's the paradox. It's not just happening to you. You get to decide what it all means. And so for people who have experienced heavy traumas, for people who have gone through very dark things, I can't tell you why it happened. I can't give you any reason that will give you solace, giving an excuse to be like, now I can finally let it go. But what I can tell you is you get to decide what the meaning is. You get to decide what the lesson or the call into more is, and pick the highest, most expansive meaning because it's true, whatever it may be. Just pull that power back into you.
So I worked at Good Vibrations. Do you know what Good Vibrations is?
No.
It's a worker-owned sex toy store. And so I was a sex educator in my 20s. Yeah. And so in that environment, and, I had a history of sexual trauma. And so I had a history of freezing. And so in that environment, you're educating people about their sexuality, about sex toys, about pleasure. They immediately feel a sense of intimacy with you. And some people are coming in and genuinely attempting to be wankers and be inappropriate and push boundaries and do inappropriate things. But people would physically touch me or really like do grotesque things. And initially my system would freeze. And so, in terms of this piece of being victimized, my habit was to initially make excuses like, well, maybe they didn't mean to
totally.
Their hand would move in that way, or maybe they didn't mean to do that with their mouth, or maybe, so minimizing, right? First, there was like a minimizing of my experience. And then over time, because I was simultaneously studying somatics and doing martial arts-based practices to melt that freeze response and be able to do something else. So it's like embodied boundaries was what I was practicing outside of work.
Yes.
But the mundane tasks of, my job became the practice ground for embodying and integrating what I was learning. And so I went from freezing when someone would go to touch me, then to saying, can you take a step back, as they were like so up in my grill. And then eventually, as an arm would go around to be placed around my hip or something, I would just keep talking about cock rings and step out of the way. And gracefully navigate this embodied boundary because I had the choice. It was already practiced in my system, right?
Yes.
So what you're talking about, it's like initially there could be first there's like a minimizing of my experience, but then there's like an anger and a feeling victimized, like they're intentionally doing some kind of thing. Some are genuinely doing those things, and they're trying to take your power away, and they're asserting their desire over, what you would ever want. They're not considering anyone but themselves. There's a lot of that in the world, right? So I'm thinking of, you also said something about, so you specifically, and I appreciate this, you use the word expansion over ascension, right? So expansion, this expansion and contraction is very much, as a somatic therapist, is an important piece, right? Our hearts contract, they expand. Our breath exhales, we inhale. So this is always happening.
Which is what a vibration is as well, right? Is an expansion, contraction. Like that is literally a vibration.
And I was in a room full of it. And so when we're in a contraction, when we're in that place, that is a place of fear, that's a place of habit, that's a place of old stories and beliefs that have run us since we were children. I think even since we're like in utero, I believe before we have language, we have
1,000%
decided
1,000%
who we need to be loved, right? So we're in this place, and then from that expanded place, we can let go of story. We can have a higher perspective of everything that's occurring, so that we're not run by the story and by the human experience, and that's where like kind of a spiritual perspective lives. But there's a lot of that in between, like going from this contracted place. If you have trauma, you're moving through the world in that state. Until I did somatic work, like I was terrified of men. I was terrified of the world. I would like to hear from you how you were introduced to concepts of embodiment, because high control religious environments really train you out of trusting your body and embracing that wisdom, right? And that from where I sit, embodiment is essential for self-compassion, compassion of others, and uncovering who we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. First, I just want to say that it's so cool, that practical example that you gave, because I think it just ties so well into what we were saying earlier, where it's like, you have these practices, you do these things, but then it's like your life becomes that meditation. And it's like your experience in that store. Yeah. It was showing you, right? Where it's like, here's where you collapse for someone else's need, where you bypass for someone else. And it's not reflecting it to you because you're doing something wrong. It's just simply showing you and giving you an opportunity to be like, okay, let me expand past this. Let me hold that boundary, right? So cool.
The learning then versus the learning now, it's been 25 years. And so the learning then, I was so excited because even in a few years later, in a sexual assaulty situation, the fact that I didn't feel scared after a situation occurred, because I was like, so excited that I had embodied boundaries and I got that fucker out of my house. So
amazing.
You know what I mean? It's like, but the embodied ability is such an important piece. Enough practice to be able to do it. But at that time, I was excited for just having embodied boundaries. Now I can see it as like, oh, that's part of my dharma, was learning that. Not that I want sexual abuse to happen to anybody, but being able to teach these embodied tools to other people is so essential and something I care so deeply about.
Yeah, it's such a tough topic to dive into, because you really, really have to be aware of like who's listening and like what's the frame of mind. Because, the big thing that I'm really trying to teach, and the reason why I use language so carefully, like for example, like expansion, like you were saying, I don't like to use higher or lower because it creates hierarchy, and people assume high, good, low, bad. And it's like duality exists, light and shadow exist for a reason. You can't have one without the other. It's like, we're here, like from the one came the two, right? This illusion of duality. The one is not up there and the two is here. It's like, this is the one, like this is the one, like what we perceive as this world is dictated by our perceptions, but it's like, it's not outside of us.
Yeah.
It's not further away. And so I love the word expansion, because we're here to expand, to hold all of it without collapse, right?
Yeah.
To be in these situations without collapsing.
And having how you physically show up, how you verbally show up, and energetically show up, be congruent with your values.
It's not, you mask one way when you speak, you think a way, and then you act a different way. It's the way that you speak is the way that you think, is the way that you feel, is the way that you express, right? Because it's you. And the more that you expand into authenticity, the more all of them come into that single piece where you're like, oh, this is just me, you know? For me, this might be annoying for some people, but also I think hopefully exciting for some people to hear. The journey really was just setting an intention and understanding that any intention that is held will manifest. Now, you don't control the time. You don't get to dictate when and how, but it's going to happen. And the way that I like describe this for people, because, you know, you have to like bypass the logical mind sometimes, because you're like, how, what? In Taoism, they often describe a river with a current, and they're like, go with the current. The way that I understand this is, you know, people talk about their highest timeline, wanting to shift onto their highest timeline, embody their highest timeline, anchor in everybody's, right? It's like we all are on different timelines. And if we all anchor in our highest timeline, beautiful things are going to happen in this plane, right? If you are the full expression that you are, it is a self-sorting puzzle. It is going to be so amazing, so beautiful. But the way I describe this is, if your desire is your highest timeline, you are actually consciously connected to that river. And it is going to divert and create a perfect path of ups and downs, lefts and rights, that are going to give you the experiences that you need to truly embody and walk with what you're already consciously wanting. So for me, you know, it's like, okay, I know that there's a lot of gnosis that I brought with me. I know that one of my abilities is to, if I can sit down, create stillness, these things are not mine. Like, I did not come up with them. I have not researched them. Like, it comes through me. And then I try to translate them with as little of my programming as possible to keep the message, you know, clear and true. So reality took me down the path of showing me every place where I wouldn't do that, right? Because I needed to see, oh, here's where I don't do it. Here's where I expand past it. Through that and holding that intention and understanding that everything is unfolding perfectly. This is not something where more effort is going to make it happen faster. To people listening to this, sometimes we are very conditioned to think, if I just meditate more, if I just do more breath work, if I just spend a little bit more time manifesting, if I do more, it's going to happen faster. It's not. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. Like, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And so the awareness is, why am I here? What is this showing me? Where is it calling me into more expansion? You know, in my document where I talk about, you know, I think sometimes people think like Christ consciousness, Buddhahood, unity consciousness, ascended master consciousness. There's so many different words. We think of it as something that we need to like ascend to, we need to grow to, you need to work towards. And it's like, no, it's something you embody. And so how do you know if you're embodying it? Well, look for the areas where you're not. If you want to embody Christ consciousness, which is the expression of love to everything and all things at all time, while holding a boundary, right? Like, love is not like, hey, I don't want to hurt you. Love sometimes is telling, if someone is being an asshole, it is saying like, I love you, I care about you, you're an asshole. Like, the way that you're acting, like, that is love, is to give them an authentic mirror and say, here's what you're doing and here's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
I
was just going to say that the thing that's so important about this notion, to me at least, of it's like ascension as the best thing. The reality is we ideally want to be in dynamic balance. And if you have a system, like my system is more wide open this way, my path, my whole life is going to be, how do I ground down? How do I connect down? Because I feel like this timeline for me has been, you know, many timelines I've spent dissociated because of traumatic events or whatever. And this life is about embodiment. This life is about having a physical experience this time around. And that also means living through a lot of physical ailment and physical pain, which calls me back into the body. And I think a
Totally.
lot of people live that. And it's like, thinking about pain as a response to dissociation, but downward, occupying yourself in a downward way. So some people need to learn how to like get out of the mud and ascend and connect to positivity if they tend towards depression. And other people who are shot out of their body most of the time need to learn how to come back. And so there's not going to be one way for anybody.
It's like you're consciously connected. You are the river and the current. You're also on the tube in the current, and it's taking, but it's like you're both parts. You know, it's like we like to think of it as an individual, and it's like, no, you're actually kind of like guiding yourself. And the key is, this is why it's that awareness and that presence, because it's perfectly dialed in for you.
Yeah.
There's like a heavy energetic density, right? I think the vast majority of human beings right now are not expressing authentically. And anytime you're not expressing authentically, pain, suffering, discomfort, all of these are actually signals to you to realign. That's all it is. Like it's serving your highest purpose. It's telling you like, hey, this isn't where you're supposed to be. Come back into alignment, right? Alignment is your most expansive state. Perfection is not a destination. The universe is infinitely expanding, and so are you. So there is no perfected state, because there's always more to anyone listening to this. And so in the same way, sometimes, for me, there was a lot I needed to heal from. And then one of the moments that was very big for me was realizing where it was like, okay, well, do I need to continue to find things to heal? Or do I need to heal from this, like, I need to heal and just recognize that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and it's like, I am who I'm supposed to be. And it's just kind of like, this all served me. What's next? What am I expanding into? What am I being called into a deeper? And this is why people say it's a spiral upwards. It's a spiral inwards. It's a spiral downwards. It's all of it, right? Because you're going to see patterns, and it's just highlighting your expansion.
Yeah, you revisit the same pains, the same habits with new tools.
Exactly.
Bounce back more quickly inside that spiral.
And it's just part of the experience. That's is all it is. And so, but it's that realization that awareness and presence, it pulls you into the moment. Most people want to escape, whether it's drugs. For me, it was, pornography, masturbation, these compulsive actions. A lot of people in spirituality want to escape by 5D consciousness, or the aliens are going to come, which they totally could. I'm not saying that's not a thing, but I'm saying in the same way that we are all projections of consciousness, this idea of beings outside of us are also an illusion and a projection of consciousness. Very real. We can experience it as real, but it's like, again, it's still outsourcing to something outside of us to come and save us, right? People want it through drugs. People use it with psychedelics, right?
Even partnership, right? I think that's a really
totally
dominant culture sells it through romantic comedies. You're going to get saved by a partner.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially to, it's your one true love. It's that Prince Charming or that princess that's going to come in and it's going to be perfect. And then people, when it's not, they're like, well, this isn't the right place. I need to escape, or whatever. And again, it's like, you give it the meaning. What do you want the meaning? Does it serve you? Do you feel what I have noticed, just speaking to partnership, it's really interesting because, as I've said, I do believe reality is a mirror and a reflection. So previous partnerships for me and relationships have all been highlights to me where I would suppress myself. Also, where I would use manipulations to get the love that I need. And I mean, these weren't dark things, like I don't have like a dark heart at all. I generally care about people, but it was still like, oh, we just had a fight and my wife wants to be close. Well, I'm going to create distance because then I know that she's going to come and chase me, like these little games. And so I was able, through those relationships, to see like, not here's what they do to me, here's where I collapse, but like, woo, okay, what am I doing? Where do I collapse someone else? Where do I dim their light?
Yeah.
And as I've gone through that, what has happened with my partner, it's not because, it's out of need. It's not something where it's like, finally, I'm completed. Both of us went through a healing journey, right? Where we came to the realization where it's like, oh, we're whole. We've always been whole. Where we can source that love that we wanted outside of us, right? Because anyone in partnership Anytime you feel loved by that partner, just so you know, it's just your programming says when this happens, you can feel this emotion that comes from you. It's you that's creating that love that you're feeling, right? No one can make you feel loved, like only you, but it gives you permission. So went down the process of self-sourcing, went down the process of which was very, very uncomfortable, of identifying and detaching from external validation. I was addicted to external validation. How many people are seeing my videos? Do people resonate with them? If they resonate with them, should I talk more like that, right? Like creating for someone else, because, it's this external validation. As we've gone through that process, what's fascinating is the partnership I'm in now is a reflection of our wholeness. Now, shadow still comes up. We're still sovereign individuals. But what is so interesting is there's a certain amount of intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and spiritual intelligence within the relationship that the way that we sum it up together, Christine and I, is previous partnerships. It's almost like they want to dim you and collapse you. Yeah. And with each other, it's like we'll notice when we're dimming and we'll expand our partner. We're just like, hey, it's like, you're amazing. Yeah. That's not the same for everyone. This is the video game that we're playing, and this is the route that we're walking. For a lot of people, the path is going to be many partners. Yeah. And experiencing, and everything having a time and a season and going through, death and rebirth cycles. And that's part of the experience they're going to have. For others, it's going to be finding that one partner and really sticking it out with them and going through the hardships of life and the ups and the downs and like all those things. For others, it's going to be no partners, right? It's just like this reality is so incredibly diverse. And, it's funny because like people talk about paths to truth. And it's just like, there's not a single system on this world that can tell you what the one path to truth is, because only you carry it within your soul. You know exactly what your path is. And the cool thing that is so beautiful, and this is why there's so much division in the world, is because people want external validation. They think if this is the path for me, it has to be the same for everyone else. Yeah. And if it's not the same for you, I don't like you. Yeah. And I disagree with you. And it's not because they actually dislike you. It's because they're unsure about their path. And when they see you not doing it, it's adding to validation where it's like, well, maybe this isn't the path, right?
Just side note, I was just talking to my friend yesterday about that in terms of eating. Right? Like whether it's someone's vegan or whether I didn't do any sweeteners for 15 years because of health stuff. And just how people need their realities validated. And if it's like, you're not drinking, like the assumption is you're judging them, or you're not eating them, you're judging. And it's like, no, we can have separate experiences. And
totally. Well, and that is the big thing that people are being called into right now. Like, again, we are in duality, which is the illusion of separation, right? It's the two. It's push, pull, masculine, feminine, right? These forces that create this idea of being separate, but it's all the one. This unified field, it's like we're in it. Like this is it. And so what's interesting with duality is you'll see a lot of things that feel very different are actually the same. So like a utopia and a dystopia ultimately go to the same destination. It's just different paths. And it's like, which one would you like? But it's kind of the same thing. Unity can come through everybody being forced to think the same, to act the same, to want the same things, to do the same things, right? That is one way to achieve unity, like unity through complete force and just making it happen. Exactly. The other path to unity is accepting everyone and everyone's experience, right? And again, I understand that people hear this and they're just like, well, what about, the child rapist? What about these terrible people? What I would say is this: number one, it's less about them, because this is about you. And your thoughts that you have when you hear that, things that come up, it's highlighting to you the energy that you have. Because again, we're all co-creators within this reality. And so, for example, if we were in a room with you, Charna, and let's say, it's like you smoke 10 packs a day of like cigarettes, and it's just one of those things where you're like, I enjoy it, but I want to get rid of it. Or actually, I'm going to pick something way worse, like mean alcoholic, where it's like really abusing the family, where it's like you can't, it's like anytime you get into that alcoholic like mood, it's like you're taking it out on people. if we're in a room with you with your family and there's 50 of us, 60 of us, and all of us have this energy of like, she's never going to change. This is who she is. You do have the power to change, but the energetic prison we are creating around you is putting so much downward pressure on you, keeping you in a box, right? You're fighting more. Mm-hmm. Now, you are still an alcoholic. You are still doing that. But if all 20 people in that room, or however many I said, are all thinking, you know what? She has a highest potential just as I do. And like, this isn't the best thing, like we need to sit with her and we need to talk with her, but I know that she can change. I know what her heart is. I know that she comes from the same divine source that I do, which means she's just expressing out of ignorance. There is so much more that she can do, and she can shift like this. It still comes down to you. You still get to be the one to decide which path that you take, but there's a lot less energy trying to force you in this prison. And there's a lot more amplification where you can tap into that energy and be like, you know what, I am going to shift, right? And we see this all the time. Like when people are vocal with their support for you, it's like the motivation you feel to do it, where you're like, I can do this, right? It is a very real principle. And so when I say that there is a path of accepting everyone as they are. And it means, yes, there's a lot of horrors going on in the world right now, but I'm not going to contribute my energy to this idea that nobody can change, even the worst of the worst, right? Yeah. They still have a highest potential. It's up to them to express it, but they still have it. And as long as I embody that energy, the most important thing is that's what it means for you. So if there's anything that doesn't serve you, if there's anything that you want to expand from, it's like you can't, because you are embodying this energy of at any point of time, things can shift. And this is where I say that your reality and your experience is going to be a reflection of you. You embodying that energy, is it going to change a child molester? No, because they are sovereign, but it is going to change you into your most expansive state. And as you expand, that does send ripples throughout all creation. The more people that take this path, it will eventually change these people in the very, very lowest of the densities, where they will say, you know what? I don't think this serves. This isn't who I am. This is not who I am. And I know that I can shift, and I know that I can expand.
It's an interesting example specifically, right? Cycles of child sexual abuse, cycles of war and genocide, cycles of like all of these things where you look at what humanity has done time and time again, specifically if you're talking about pedophilia, basically research shows that people don't change that habit.
Yeah.
That's a really tricky one. And yet I wonder sometimes, like, because there are certain notions that they're culturally framed, right? That like what we see as a psychosis in this culture might be seen as vision in a different culture,
totally,
et cetera, right? So the rigidity that we have studied through kind of reinforces those boxes. Although this is it's a tricky example across culture. It exists everywhere, right?
Yeah.
We could probably, I know that we could talk.
It's so good.
We could talk for hours and hours and hours.
Totally could.
Yeah.
So appreciate you having me.
Where else can listeners find you?
It's mainly just TikTok and Instagram right now. And, we're figuring out some other things so that we can dive a little bit deeper than what we do on social media. So just follow me there.
Awesome.
Yeah. You're your own. You are the best teacher for yourself. You are your own guide. You hold the scripture within yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, good to spend time with you. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. If you appreciated this episode, please like, rate, and review it, and share it with your friends. Always interested in building community. And also so that people can find the other resources that I offer. If you go to passionatelife.org, you can find out more information about my in-person group or my online course and workbook if you're not local. And you can sign up for my newsletter at charnacassell.com. And that will keep you posted about my offerings. This has been the LaidOPEN Podcast. I'm your host, Charna Cassell. We all have different capacities, but I believe in our capacity to grow and change together. Until next time.